from some people, and we get to see everyone. So we're glad to have you back. Before we kick it off with Curtis, we are excited to have John here from Stillwater to give us a quick highlight on the prairies here. So please help me welcome John from Stillwater.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming to our campus at Stillwater. I've been a part of these here for over 10 years, starting as a volunteer on a committee. And then during the pandemic, I wanted to do something to give back. And since my mom had passed on in our inpatient unit in 2014, I had a real affinity for Stillwater. So I backed into the job I'm currently in because I was looking to wind down a photography career of almost 30 years. And I love the outdoors. So I started to volunteer on what is our prairie, which is right outside these windows, 2 acres of lovely native landscaping. But before I go on and tell you a little bit more about that, may I just ask how many of you in this room, simple show of hands, have at one point or maybe every week found solace in nature? City park, national park, okay, so almost everybody. So you're speaking my language, and I certainly am now working my language. Stillwater had the presence of mind in 2006, the leadership group, to actually look at 2 acres of lowland that is outside the window and say, what can we do with that? They knew they wanted to put in the inpatient unit. They later put on the administration building. This was not even dreamt about yet, the building we're in. But they looked at those 2 acres, and I invite you to walk through. It's a little chilly today, but you're welcome back anytime. And they thought, what if we put in a native prairie? Indiana had about 15% of its acreage when the settlers first arrived that were native prairie. North America had about a third of it was covered in prairie. And what would be the purpose for a hospice organization to put in prairie? The answer is comfort and solace. And a place for family members who have loved ones here who are passing on or near that point. They need a place to go outside and collect themselves. It's a very peaceful place. We have 70 different species of flowering, what are called herbaceous plants in our prairie that were here also when the Native Americans were roaming this part of the land. And so what you'll find in our prairie is not only the family members of our patients who are needing our service, but also members of the community, because we are linked to the trail system of Fort Wayne now through a grant from the ARC Foundation. And if you go down the Liberty Mills Trail or the Homestead Road Trail, it's a hop, skip, and a jump to come down to the prairie. It's mulch paths, and at any given time you can see animals, wildlife, pollinators, everything that lives off the land gets a little oasis out back of Stillwater, and it's open to the public. My job is to oversee about 20, believe it or not, Prairie Posse volunteers. That's what we named ourselves. And some will come once a week, some will come once a year, but we're happy to see them whenever they come. And they learn about native plants, what it takes to raise them, and care for the property. We get to burn the prairie, which is everybody's exciting thing to hear about, every 4 years, and native grassland and prairie land needs to be burned. The Native Americans taught us that, and it serves a really great purpose. You may have been to Eagle Marsh at some point. They just had a burn at their Arrowhead Preserve. It's an exciting 2-hour period, and then everything gets to come back to life renewed. So Stillwater did a really good thing in '06. It'll celebrate 20 years next year, and I invite you back. Peak bloom is June, July, so if you find yourself an extra hour on your hands, come see us, please. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, I think Curtis Smith needs no introduction. He's Fort Wayne famous, obviously, so we're excited to have him this morning and to hear more about his leadership journey, not just from maybe the parts that we have viewed from an outsider's lens, but to learn from him as well. So help me welcome Curtis to Fort Wayne.
Thanks, Cassie. Thanks, everybody. I was going to make a joke about what an honor it was to be the first ever speaker at Second Fridays, but apparently this happened last year because of spring break, which I appreciate you guys moving it to Second Fridays, because I wouldn't have been here last week. My wife is a school teacher, and so spring break still matters to me, even though our kids are out of school. My name is Curtis Smith, and as Cassie alluded to, many of you probably know me from my days in TV. I'm now the executive director at the Do It Best Foundation for the last 6 months or so, and I'll tell you a little bit about my career journey today and then some of the leadership lessons that I've learned along the way. I'm going to start my story, though, the way I assume most of you start your story, by talking about Mike Tyson. I assume most of you in the room know who Mike Tyson is. Some of you on the younger side might think that Mike Tyson is just some strange guy who shows up occasionally in movies with a face tattoo. But when I was growing up, when I was in high school, this is what Mike Tyson looked like. He was the baddest man on the planet. He was the undefeated, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. He was so dominant that the most common, this is a fact, the most common result of his championship fights was a first round knockout. That was the most common result when the other biggest, baddest men in the world got into the ring with him. Inside of a minute or two, they were laying on their backs. And so Mike Tyson was just dominant in the boxing world. This is what it looked like when people fought Mike Tyson. The guy getting hit there is Michael Spinks. Michael Spinks was undefeated when he fought Mike Tyson. This blow occurred in the first round, and Michael Spinks was on the ground a moment later and out. He had never lost a fight, and he's knocked out cold in the first round. And as Tyson was preparing for one of his championship fights, he accidentally said one of the most profound things I've ever heard. Unfortunately, it applied to my life many years later. A reporter was saying to him, hey, this guy that you're fighting, he's figured out your fighting style. And he knows how he's going to attack you. And even though you are undefeated and the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, he's got a plan, and he thinks he's going to beat you. And this is what Tyson said. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Michael Spinks doesn't look like he has much of a plan right now. And that's the story of my life. Because forever, I was doing what I thought I should be doing. I was doing what I went to school to do. I was doing what I loved to do. I was doing what I thought I would do for the rest of my life. And then life punched me in the face. I used to be on TV. I used to be the chief meteorologist at 21 Alive. Ironically, I was there for 21 years. 21 years at 21 Alive. And I loved my job. Even on days when this was my job, to tell you that it was going to be snowing, to spend the night at the station because there were tornadoes coming, whatever. I loved my job. I loved the weather. I loved doing something that I thought helped people every day. And then, over the course of those 21 years, I had been given the opportunity to take my job and turn it into other things that I loved doing and thought brought value to our community. Things like hosting a golf challenge. I supported a lot of nonprofits. Those are actually my legs. For several years, I hosted Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, and I actually walked a mile in those high heels. And for those of you that wear high heels, my hat is off to you. I don't know how you do it. That was one of the worst experiences of my whole life. I was in the Three Rivers Festival Parade and did many public appearances with Melissa Long and Tommy Schegler, and I had a lot of fun making fun of Melissa on the air. This is St. Patrick's Day one year when she said to me, "Why aren't you wearing green?" Now keep in mind, I stood in front of a green screen every day where I couldn't wear green. And so I said, "Hey, you're wearing green, come over here." And she got up from the news desk and came over with her green shirt, and you can see the entire Midwest through her torso. And the look on her face says, "Yes, I'm an idiot." And then I did stupid things like grow the most hideous beard you've ever seen. A couple of times on TV, I stopped shaving on the first day of winter and would not be allowed to shave or trim until we hit 70 degrees, and viewers would write in and guess about it. People kind of lost their minds about it. This is the scale that I learned as I grew beards. The more female and the older you are, the more you hated it. The more male and the more young you are, the more you loved it. So a 17-year-old boy was worshiping me while a 90-year-old woman wanted to stab me to death. That was the reaction. That was the spectrum of reacting to the beard. And then late in my time on TV, I started doing mission trips on TV. I did 4 mission trips on TV. I went to Israel, Africa, Haiti, and Guatemala, and literally broadcast back here to Fort Wayne, standing in those places. Several times I opened my Bible, which means a lot to me personally, and read from my Bible. The first time I did that, I was standing in Jerusalem, reading from my Bible on TV in Fort Wayne. And that was one of those moments where I thought, how stupid is this? How great is my life? My life is perfect. I'm doing the job I love. I get to play golf on TV. I get to grow stupid beards and have fun, make fun of Melissa, and I get to go around the world and broadcast from all these incredible places. And I'm just a weather guy in Fort Wayne. This is unbelievable. And I truly, actively was one of those people that thought, I will never retire. I will just drop dead one day in the Weather Center, and that's great. I hope it happens when I'm 98. I'm going to work the rest of my life in this job. And then I got punched in the face. Those first 20 years of the 21 years I was at 21 Alive, we were owned by a company called Granite Broadcasting. Granite Broadcasting owned about 10 TV stations around the country. And then they sold. And they sold to a company that owned about 50 television stations around the country. Since I've left, which was 9 years ago this month, I left TV April of 2016. That station, the station again, has been sold to a group that owns about 150 stations. So it's what a lot of you have experienced in different industries. Consolidation has hit television hard, and it has changed the entire dynamic of TV. TV was so fun. It was like working in a kindergarten class. We just had fun. It was one big open room in the newsroom. We all loved each other. I loved being there. It was long hours. I would go to work every day at 1:30 and get home at midnight. If the weather didn't cooperate, I wasn't getting a dinner break. My wife's a teacher. My kids were in school, so they would be gone when I would wake up every day. And when I got home from work, they were gone. So if the weather didn't really cooperate and I couldn't get out of the station for a little bit, there were many days I did not see my family, and yet I still loved my job. When the station was sold, the FCC gets involved, and anytime the government gets involved, it really slows down the process. So the sale of a TV station doesn't happen like that. It gets announced, and it's probably 6 to 9 months later before it actually takes hold. So once the sale was announced, the new owners came in and met all of us. And the new CEO came up to me in the Weather Center and was like, hey, mission trip guy. And I'm like, okay, this guy knows who I am. He knows that I do other stuff outside of weather. This is going to be great. And he was very supportive and was like, love what you do. We just want to keep doing what you are doing. This is going to be awesome for all of us. We're going to pour into the community through nonprofits. We want you to do the mission trips. Keep doing the weather. Keep doing everything you're doing. Perfect. 6, 9 months go by. The sale happens. Day one, he comes to me and says, no more mission trips. No more golf challenge. You're just doing the weather. I want you sitting in this spot every day, just doing the weather. And instantly, I thought, ooh, I don't know. Like, I've turned this into my dream job, and now you're taking some of that away. And then they fired a bunch of people, and then they forced other people out, and then all the stuff that we've been doing in the community went away. And literally, for every ratings book I had ever been there are 4 ratings periods a year in television. We had been number 1 every ratings book I had been there for whatever, years. Overnight, the next ratings book, we were number 2. All of a sudden, we started losing to Channel 15. They changed the culture so bad and had no idea what that was going to do to their product. And life punched me in the face. And I learned what this statement is saying is very true. You've probably all heard this. People don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses. I didn't have a bad job. On paper, it was still very similar to what I had been doing. But I went from loving my job, so excited to drive in when I knew I was going to be there for the next 20 hours because of a snowstorm or a tornado, to hating my job, to begging God to give me some avenue, some answer to get out of there. Every day, that's how I spent my drive to work. Months later, I had this, what I thought was a chance meeting with Rick Henby, who at the time was the COO of Parkview. He's now the CEO of Parkview. I'm emceeing an event in the Miro Center. There's 500 people in the room. And late in the event, I'm walking around about to wrap things up, and I've got a microphone in my hand, and Rick comes up to me, and we've said hi to each other in the past, and he's talking to me, and I said, it took me a minute, and I finally said to him, "Are you talking to me about a job?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm holding a microphone, and there's 500 people in the room, and everybody knows who I am. I can't, you've got to get away from me." I don't think Rick is used to people telling him to go away. And so driving home that night, I said to my wife, Rick Henry came up to me, and I think he's talking to me about a job. Now keep in mind, every day I am begging God and thinking, what crazy door could be opened that allows me to stay in Fort Wayne? Because my wife and I had fallen in love with Fort Wayne. Our kids are in high school at this point. We didn't want to go anywhere. And being a meteorologist on TV, my only training by school, it's not like being a doctor or a lawyer or something else. I can't just go open up my own shop. There are 2 or 3 jobs in the whole city that I am qualified for in my mind. And so I'm saying to God, man, do something crazy. Like, I need some door that I can't see to open. Rick Henby comes along, and I'm driving home, and I say to my wife, I think Rick Henby might be crazy. I don't know what he was talking to me about. I checked my email that night around midnight. Rick writes me an email. Hey, great to connect with you. Let's get together and talk about what a job at Parkview could look like. And again, I remember right before bed saying to my wife, I think you might have a problem. I don't know, like, what am I going to do for a hospital? Anyway, met with him, figured out what he was talking about, and became the corporate director of community engagement for Parkview Health, and was in that role for 5 years. I left Parkview, I went to Lasting Change, which is a nonprofit here in town that operates Lifeline and Crosswinds. Was there for the last 4 years, and then 6 months ago, came to Do It Best. On my first day at Do It Best, our CEO, Dan Starr, and I went up to the roof of Electric Works, and we had a beverage in our hand, and he said, here's to your last first day ever. Right? I could get choked up about that if I thought about it. I've landed in the spot that I think I'm supposed to be in for the rest of my life after leaving the spot that I was sure I was going to be for the rest of my life. Here's what Gallup has studied and found. 50% of employees who choose to leave do so because of their manager. That doesn't seem all that shocking until you compare it to what managers actually think people are leaving for. 89% of bosses think employees leave for more money, and 12% of people actually leave for more money. Culture, your interaction, your relationships with your employees, that is what drives people in or out of your place. And so after 21 years, I left my best friends, Melissa Long and Tommy Schegler. That's me in the middle when I had hair. And I left my dream job. And since that time, the last couple of years of TV and the last 9 years of my career, I've learned a lot of leadership lessons. I want to share a few of them with you today. I'm happy that I've learned the lessons I'm about to share. But I want to be clear about this. They were painful lessons to learn because unfortunately, and many of you may relate to this, most of the leadership lessons that I have seen firsthand and have been given have been what not to do. And so I am going to take you through a few leadership mistakes today, things that I have lived through and I have seen play out poorly. There are so many books, so many speeches, everything is about what to do in the leadership world. Do this, do that, do this. I haven't seen a whole lot of that. I've seen very little of that. What I have seen is what not to do. And so I'm going to share some of those mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes, those first 20 years in TV felt like a kindergarten class because leadership was missing. It was absent leadership. They just let us have our run of the place. That was awesome in my 20s and 30s. But as I became a real adult, we were looking for direction. And that lack of direction was slowly eroding us, and I didn't even realize it. Absent leadership is a real problem in our countries. The second thing I want to share is that a failure to create culture is worse than you might think it is. Because in the absence of leadership, a culture will form. It just won't be the one that you want it to be. It won't be the one that you choose. If you're a leader and you're not actively creating culture, bad news. Culture is being created, it's just not the one you want. Create the culture you want. And if you're not a leader, change it from the inside out. Because you have influence. If you ever go to the GLS every year, you'll hear that said over and over again. You have influence. Change the culture from the inside out. Because the culture is happening. It's being formed. Someone is making it. You have a role to play in that. This is a quote from Jim Clifton, who's the CEO of Gallup. He said, remarkably, 70% of the variance between lousy, good, and great cultures can be found in the knowledge, skills, and talent of the team leader. Not the players, but the team leader. This is one of Gallup's most profound workplace breakthroughs. He's been the CEO of Gallup since 1988, and they have done thousands and thousands of studies on leadership. And he finds that 70% of the entire culture comes down to that one person. If you're that person, change the culture for good, because it's being created, whether you want it to be or not. One of the biggest leadership mistakes I have seen made is saying, I have an open door policy, leaving it at that, and expecting that to be enough. This is a true story. General manager comes into our station at 21. First day, he says, hey everybody, I have an open door policy. Okay? A few months go by, we have an all staff meeting, and he gets back in front of the entire staff and he says, hey, I told you guys on day one, I have an open door policy. And not one person has ever stopped into my office. And we were all sitting there thinking, well, right, you're an a-hole. Nobody wants to come see you. So just because you have an open door policy doesn't mean people want to walk through that door. If it's the door to a haunted house, no one's coming in. It's not enough to have an open door policy. Micromanaging is one of the easiest traps for all of us to fall into. If you're here at First Fridays, there's a pretty good chance that you're a go-getter, a hard worker, you're a doer, you're somebody who knows how to put their head down and grind through a situation, and that's great. And I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying allow other people to do that too. You don't have to micromanage your way through leading people. Let them work hard too. Let them have some ownership stake in what's going on. This, to me, is one of the biggest problems in leadership, and it's probably the easiest trap to fall into, because most great leaders, or most leaders, have worked very hard to get to that spot, and it's hard to let go at all. I'm encouraging you to let go. At the same time, don't do too much. Don't only focus on work. You are leading people, and at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is people. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, no one is going to remember what your P&L looked like in 2025. They're not. All they're going to remember is how you made them feel. I'm going to briefly tell you the story of my grandfather for two reasons. One is because I could tell you it for much longer, and two is it will make me emotional. My grandfather was a tremendous man. He lived to 92. He had a degree, a master's, and a doctorate from Michigan. He was a professor of anatomy in the Ivy Leagues. And he went to the University of Tennessee. I was born in Memphis because he made that decision. He went to the University of Tennessee to help them start their anatomy department. And he was a brilliant guy. And over his 40 years of teaching at the University of Tennessee, he helped create hundreds of doctors. His ripple effect is just tremendous. Brilliant guy, the kind of guy that we would play Trivial Pursuit as a family and he wasn't allowed to play. Because the game would be over in 6 questions and it wasn't fun. Smartest guy I've ever met. I couldn't tell you one detail about his work life. I don't know what going to work looked like for him every day. He died when I was in my 30s, so I knew him as an adult. The only thing I can tell you is how he made me feel. And for my entire childhood, he was a huge baseball fan, and so was I. He got season tickets to the minor league team in Memphis, and he would meet my mom halfway and pick me up in a car and take me to baseball games all summer long. And when I think about my grandfather, I don't think about a genius. I don't think about a guy who taught in the Ivy Leagues. I don't think about a guy who trained hundreds of doctors that helped health systems around the world and poured into the lives of people and made a real difference in our world. I think about the guy who got me ice cream at a baseball game. I can remember the first time I ever sipped a Mountain Dew. I thought, what sweet nectar from the gods is this? And my grandfather's like, right? His whole 92 years get boiled down for me, someone who knew him really well, to, man, it was fun to be with him. Man, I knew he loved me. Man, I wish I had more time with him. That's what your impact is on people that you lead. They will not remember your P&L. They will not remember how successful you were in business. They will only remember how you made them feel. So don't only focus on work. At the same time, don't be too buddy-buddy. There is a line. I saw that line crossed early in my TV days. Before coming to Fort Wayne, I was doing the weather in a city called Alexandria, Louisiana. My friends lovingly call it Armpit, Louisiana. It was right in the middle of the state, hot and humid. And I was very young. It was my first full-time on-air job after college. And so I'm 22. And I started on the weekends, as you typically do in TV. And then a couple months into the job, they made me the main weather anchor. And so right after that, our general manager and our general sales manager, so the top 2 guys in our station, say to me and our sports guy, hey, we're super into racquetball. Would you guys want to come out and play racquetball with us? And we thought, yeah, absolutely. And I was 22, our sports guy was in his 20s, we were young and dumb. And we didn't know the lesson of, don't beat your boss. So we did, we beat our boss. And the next day, our general sales manager came to us and said, hey, if we ever play racquetball again, don't win. And then he got real serious and he said, I'm not joking. I had to talk Sam out of firing you today. Oh, wow. And I remember like this hole in my chest, like, what? Huh? He had no emotional intelligence. I'm 22. I have no intelligence, period. I don't know how to read that situation. We almost lost our jobs that day because he couldn't take the fact that he lost a game of racquetball. So be careful. Know yourself well enough to know where your emotional intelligence line is. Know your people well enough to know where their line is, and don't cross it. I'm not saying you can't be friends with people you lead. I'm just saying be careful about it, know where the line is, because it's different for everybody. Which leads to my next point. One size does not fit all. You can't lead everybody exactly the same, because they're not. They're uniquely created to be in the role that they're in. And someone else is uniquely created to be in the role they're in. Right now, before I go to the next slide, if I say to each of you, hey, I want you to train a world-class athlete. Think about that. Take 5 seconds. What would that look like? What would you do right now? You need to train a world-class athlete. Some of you are thinking, okay, I got to get into a gym. I got to get a bunch of weights. We got to get a weightlifting program. Some of you are thinking, I got to build a nutrition plan. Whatever you're thinking. But here's the point. Not everyone is the same. Now, if I said to you, develop a plan for these two world-class athletes, you would come up with two very different plans, right? The guy on the left, if you said to him, hey, I need you to lose as much weight as possible, he would look at you like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to be Mr. Olympia. I need to weigh whatever he weighs, 250 pounds, not an ounce of fat on it. And if you said to the girl on the right, hey, I need you to get in the gym and really bulk up, she'd be like, what are you talking about? If I weigh anything over 98 pounds, I can't do all these flips and tumble through the air. Training a world-class athlete is not a cookie-cutter process, and leading people in your business is not a cookie-cutter process. One size does not fit all. People are unique. Roles are unique. Lead people individually and not with a cookie-cutter mindset. This one goes along with micromanaging. To me, it's one of the easiest traps to fall into. We used to do satisfaction reports, and if you're old enough, you get the reference here. Okay, a couple chuckles. That's Mick Jagger. I can't get no satisfaction. Yes, no, some nods. All right. Whoops, sorry. Left alone, satisfaction will erode and turn into discontent and unrest. Satisfaction should not be our goal. We should not want people to be satisfied with their jobs, with their experience of working with us. We need them to be engaged. We need them to be engaged so our businesses do well, so our goals get met, but we need them to be engaged so that we get that personal connection with them that is actually going to drive better results. Satisfaction is not the goal. Engagement is the goal. So here's a quick list of the don'ts that I've learned. Don't manage, lead. Don't do nothing. You've got to do something. Don't be absent. But don't do too much. You got to know where that line is. Don't isolate. Be engaged with your people. Don't just trust that satisfaction is happening because you're leaving them alone. Be engaged. Don't act like you're not being watched. If you're a leader, I guarantee you're being watched more than you think you are. I talked to Dan Starr just the other day, our CEO at Do It Best, and he was telling me a story about how he said something months and months ago, and somebody came back and quoted him exactly, and he was like, I can't believe they even remember what I said. And I said, Dan, you're the CEO. When people listen to you, they're hanging on every word, like they remember that. You're being watched so intently, I can't even describe it to you. He was like, thanks for that reminder. So don't act like you're not being watched, you are. Don't set unclear goals. Be very clear about goals. Help people understand what you expect out of them. This is, again, a very easy trap. It's hard for some of us to be confrontational. It's hard for us to be clear, and sometimes that feels like we're getting confrontational. Be clear. Don't forget that you have a boss too. All of you have a boss. If you're a CEO, you've got a board of directors, you have investors, you have a boss. Don't forget that you have a boss too when you're a boss. And don't forget the golden rule. Just treat people like you want to be treated. This is the final story I want to share with you. That is me. For those of you who remember my final days at 21 Alive, I cried on live television when I left TV. It was a very emotional experience for me. I'm an emotional guy. I've learned to embrace that more in my older age. Part of the reason that was emotional was I had been there 21 years. And I loved the people there, and I loved my job, and I wanted to do it for the rest of my life. But part of the reason that it was emotional, and what most people didn't know, is that I was on live TV when I was 15 years old. It's the only job I had ever had. I wasn't just leaving 21, I was leaving the only career I'd ever had. I went to this really strange high school in Memphis that owned an actual television station. We weren't doing morning announcements for kids. We owned a 24/7 cable station that was seen throughout all of Memphis. In large part because our high school was enormous. I went to high school of 3,000 kids. It's since been divided up into 2 high schools. But at the time we had 650 people in my class, and we were the smallest of the 4 classes. And because of that, our sports teams were amazing. We were winning the state championship in every sport every other year. Our baseball team won the USA Today National Championship one of the years I was there. So we were broadcasting all of these sporting events out to people that really wanted to see them. One of my high school's biggest problems was it didn't have enough seating for all the people that wanted to come to the games. So they created this television station. And this professor from college was hired because he came along and said, hey, I don't think you guys realize what you started. You should make this a 24/7 fully operational run by kids station. And they said, okay, we'll hire you, do that. By the time I got into high school in the mid-'80s, he had done that. And so one day I was sitting in class and they said, hey, if you'd like to be a part of our TV station, come try out. And I thought, oh, that sounds fun. And so I went and tried out. And the next thing you know, I'm literally on live TV at 15. And so I never worked at McDonald's, I never did anything else. The only paycheck I ever received until I was 43 years old was from a television station. In high school, I was going to the station on Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. I had a full-time job. We had to keep that station running 24/7. So that's me on the left, broadcasting our high school football game. Me on the right, that's me literally broadcasting from a professional tennis event. I got to interview Boris Becker and Stefan Edberg and all kinds of people, and I'm like 16 there. That's part of the reason that TV was so emotional for me to leave. But it almost didn't happen because I ran into a great leader who gave me a tough message when he could have done the other thing. This is that leader. His name is Tommy Harrison. He was my high school basketball coach. So in high school, and to this day, I love basketball. Basketball is my favorite sport. I'm a huge Boston Celtics fan. And in high school, despite the fact that I was a 5'10" white guy, I was convinced I was headed to the NBA. Because I was pretty good at shooting the 3. I thought, okay, I could be the little white guy. I can be John Paxson, Steve Kerr. I can sit out there and I can be the guy that hits the 3 when everyone else is being guarded. I only played for the JV team as a sophomore. And that's when I was starting to get involved in the television station. And so one day after practice, I go to Coach Harrison, and I am wrought with the weight of what's happening in my life because TV was a full-time job. And I was going to school, and I was playing basketball. And it was getting to the point where I knew something had to give because it was going to break me. And I had been wrestling with what to do. What am I going to do about this? And so finally I go to Coach Harrison after practice one day and I said, Coach, I don't know what to do. TV is taking so much time and basketball takes so much time. What do I do? Coach Harrison looked right at me and he said, do TV. And I said, thanks, Coach. I expected him to be like, you can't leave the team. We need your three-point shooting. You're so valuable to the team, and you can make both work. At the time, I was crushed. I went home and said to my parents, Coach Harrison said I should just quit and do TV. And they're like, well, right. You know, like, we've seen you play. He could have done the easy thing. The easy thing would have been for him to look at me and say, we can make it work. You can be late occasionally, or if you have to miss a practice, it's fine. We can make this work. Coach Harrison did not know that I had a lifetime career ahead of me in television. But he did know that I did not have a lifetime career ahead of me in basketball. And so he did the right thing, and he didn't do the easy thing. And he gave me a tough message. As a leader, you're going to have to give people a tough message sometimes. Do the right thing, not the easy thing. And the last thing before we get to Q&A time is I just want to leave you with one of my favorite proverbs. I love this statement. Army of sheep led by a lion can defeat an army of lions led by a sheep. To me, that in a microcosm is what Jim Clifton is saying. They have done all sorts of scientific studying to realize this old African proverb is correct. The leader matters. And so if you're the leader, do better every day. Do your very best, because what you do matters. And if you're being led, demand that your leader get better and you be better. Lead by example, because the leader matters. Thanks for listening to my story today. I'm happy to answer questions.
Who's got the first question? Not everybody at once.
Yeah, this is going to be super easy.
I know the first one's the hardest.
I have a question. As a communications head, a few times now, you're communicating for the leader. How do you shape, or what impact do you have on the shape of what the leader's saying? Or are you just parroting?
There are times you have to walk the line of both. Can everybody hear the question? The question was, as a communications leader, sometimes you're communicating for the leader. How do you help shape that message versus just parroting? There are times you got to do both, I would tell you. And the work depends on the leader too. The work depends on how much the leader needs their message shaped. I'll just tell you, without using names, in one of my recent jobs, I said to our CEO, you can't be in front of our staff. It's not helping to have you in front of them. So that was a hard thing for me to say. You get nervous when you say things like that to your CEO. But Coach Harrison inspired me, right? I told him that, and he took it. And he said, okay, I'm going to take a few months, and I'm not going to be in front of the staff at all. And I said, thank you. Like, our staff needs a little bit of a break, and it's not going well. So we need you to help me by letting me just kind of do some of the communicating for us. And he did that for a while, and then jumped back in. But it's a line. It's a line, and no situation is exactly the same, and no leader is the exact same. So it's a hard thing to do. For the great leaders, it is easy. It's cake. Like when I was at Parkview, I would host LDI every quarter, and Mike Packnett was our CEO. I mean, it's like, lobbing the ball up to Michael Jordan. It's like, all right, you just go do what you want. I'm going to introduce you. He was so great. But yeah, it changes. Yes?
With your love for sports, what made you go into the weather? And by the way, you did a great job on the weather.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I do love the weather. So I did start in sports on TV, and then I took a weather class in high school, and then went on and got a second degree in meteorology. So I have 2 bachelors of communications and meteorology. So I just kind of fell in love with the math and science of it. I was always good at math, and you have to know math. Meteorology is one of those strange things where they make you learn calculus, even though you'll never do it a day in your life, because the computers do it for you. So yeah, I was just drawn to it because of math and science, and once I got into it, I really loved it. And then I realized that it is the best job on TV because it's the only thing that everyone cares about. Seriously, some people like the news, and some people are like, I'm so sick of hearing bad news, I'm not watching the news. And some people love sports, and some people are like, I couldn't care less who won last night's game. But everybody cares. I mean, the very first conversation I had today, somebody and I got out of the car at the same time. Yes. And we were like, it's so cold and it's mid-April. Like, it's the weather's on everyone's mind every day, right? And it impacts how you dress and what you do and where you go and can you go. And so early on I realized I love this, and it's the most impactful thing. And that's what my whole TV career ended up being about. I wasn't smart enough to think about it when I was early, But by the time I got into my 30s, I was realizing, okay, I do the thing that everyone cares about. I have leverage to turn that into, oh, well, let's do fun things like go golf challenge. Let's do silly things like grow a beard. Let's do meaningful things like mission trips. Because I have 100% of the audience. Everybody who watches a newscast cares what I say. Some of them care about this, some of them care about this, but they all care about this. So let me leverage that to make it more about helping people. So I always viewed it as helping people because it was the thing they cared about. One of my very few of my moments get talked about to me. Most people talk to me about the beard, or I did this weird Twitter thing, call it off. If you're 30, you might remember it. But one of the moments that most people remember is there was a night, it was probably midnight or 1 a.m., and I'm up at the station and we had a tornado coming through Fort Wayne. And my son called the weather center, and I could see on the caller ID that it was my house. And so I'm live on the air. I'm literally talking to a camera, and I glance over and I see my home phone and I say, hold on one second, my family's calling. And I answer the phone and I said, and it's my middle son Jake, and he said, hey, Mom's freaking out, should we get to the basement? And I said, yes, go to the basement right now. Tell Mom to get everybody awake and get to the basement right now. I'll be home in a little while. And hung up, and that happened on live TV, and that's a moment that people still talk to me about. And they were like, you cared about us. We knew that your family was at home going through this too, and you were there helping us get through. And that's what it was all about to me. It wasn't about the mechanism of weather. It was just about how can I try to help people, because I love people.
Do you have any specific books about leadership that you think would be very inspiring for us to read?
Gosh, that's a good question that I wish I had a good answer for. Yeah, the question was, do I have any specific leadership books that have inspired me that I would recommend? No is the short answer. I don't have a book that has ever left me wowed. I don't know if it's the way I'm wired combined with the life I've led, but I really have been more motivated by the negative. I've been more motivated by what not to do, and that's what I've seen more of. And so I get fueled by, I mean, just to be completely honest, experiences that have left me thinking, gosh, that sucked. That day, that season of life was horrible. How can I make sure I never do that to other people? How can I make sure that I am never that guy? I hate saying that almost. It's awful to say, because some of you know who I've worked with. And this is on camera right now. Yes.
So thank you for an amazing talk about leadership. It's awesome to just hear you and hear your experiences. And now, if you were to think about, and congratulations on your new role at
Thanks.
Best. Dan Starr is an amazing leader.
Yeah.
How do you see your contributions at Do It Best unfolding over the next several years?
Yeah, hopefully more than several.
The last first day, right?
Yeah, the last first day. So the question was, Dan Starr is an incredible leader, and my role at Do It Best, and how do I see my impact there? So I have a singular title. My title is Executive Director of the Do It Best Foundation, but I was really hired into a dual role. So I'm leading the foundation, which is fairly young. The foundation started about 5.5 years ago for Do It Best. Right before COVID, so not a whole lot happened with it the first 2 years. The last couple of years, Randy Rusk, who I know a lot of you know, has been leading it. Randy did an incredible job. I'll tell you a funny story about being hired in just a second. The second part of my role there is a communications role. I host a podcast with Dan. I host things at the spring market and the fall market, the two big trade shows for Do It Best. I host and MC town halls and interview sessions on video and all kinds of stuff. So that's kind of the second part of my role. So I get to shape kind of the communication message of Do It Best. So that's part of it. But the heart of my day job at Do It Best is to run the foundation. And our entire goal is to give money away. is to support nonprofits. And in the 5-ish years, we've given out about 1.2 million so far. We're a small foundation in the foundation world. We're not Lilly, but we're gonna grow a lot, and we're gonna give away a lot more money. In the next couple of weeks, I'm going out with those big Ed McMahon checks, and I'm handing out money to people, and it's gonna feel amazing. I made that reference to somebody at work the other day, and they're like, "Who's Ed McMahon?" You know, Johnny Carson? And she said, "Who's Johnny Carson?" And I'm that guy now. I'm old. I'm making 70s pop culture references. Here's the funny story about getting hired at Do It Best. So Dan and Nick Talarico, Dan's now the CEO of Do It Best and True Value. Nick is the president of Do It Best. They called me up and said, "Hey, Randy is going to retire in the summer of 2025. This is in September. And we are looking to get a new executive director for the foundation hired probably April or so, and give that person 2 or 3 months with Randy and have a nice handoff and then take over." And I said, "Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely interested. I would have a conversation with you guys about that. I'd love to learn more." The very next conversation I had a couple days later was Nick calling me and goes, "Hey, I know we were talking about getting somebody hired in like April, about 7 months from now. Could you start tomorrow?" And I said, "No, I can't start tomorrow, but tell me what you're talking about." And he said, "Well, the True Value acquisition is happening, or Randy's not retiring, we're moving him out of a role, and I need an executive director for the foundation today." And so we steamrolled the process through, and next thing you know, I started in October. So here in a couple of weeks, I'll hit 6 months at Do It Best. So I'm still very much in the new phase, but it's such an amazing company. It's one of those, every company will tell you, "We have an amazing culture, our people are awesome." Everyone says that. So far, in my experience, this is the place where it's most true. The people are amazing, and what they do is incredible. Because the entire thing, it's a co-op. Most people don't know about Do It Best all that much. Do It Best is the largest private company in all of Indiana. And that was before acquiring True Value, a company larger than Sweetwater. Most people don't understand that. They picked up True Value. In Fort Wayne, we think Sweetwater is this massive thing, and it is. True Value, the thing that we just acquired, is larger than Sweetwater. That's how big Do It Best is. And the whole model is a co-op. All we do is support member owners around the world. So we have member owners in all 50 states and something like 50 other countries, and they own Do It Best. So we don't technically, like you go to Conley's Do It Best here in Fort Wayne, we don't own that. Technically, the owners of Conley's own us. They own a piece of the co-op. And so our whole job, our whole existence is to serve them. So the entire model of the company is servant leadership. And it starts with Dan. Dan, if you guys don't know Dan Starr is, I would say, the best leader in Fort Wayne, but he's certainly among the handful of companies. He is as down to earth as you could possibly be as a CEO, the most servant leadership, others driven leader I've ever been around. Yeah, Keith.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
let's go ahead. Curtis, will you hang around?
Yeah, I will hang
All
around.
right, so let's give Curtis another round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few things. How many people here, this is your second Friday? First Friday. Awesome. So just to kind of give you some rundown is I'm lucky enough to work with a board that puts a lot of effort into putting these seasons together. And my name's Jared, so get around, introduce yourself to our board members and myself, because we couldn't do it without you guys being here and supporting our speakers, because they do this voluntarily, and it's amazing the stuff that we learn. So our mission here at First Fridays is meet someone new, so make sure you meet someone new. That's why we do the name tags now. Learn something, did I say learn something new? Learn something new. So I hope you learned a lot from Curtis today. There's a lot of nuggets. Really, I have a whole book full. But one of the things that I can't stop singing is, I can't get no. But share the tough messages. It's hard as a leader to share that tough message. So that one really hit home with me because there's some times that I felt like I've been in my career for 5 years, and I'm like, man, I wish someone would have told me this 3 years ago. So thank you for that. And the other thing that we're gonna add is bring someone new. We've been talking to a few people and they're like, hey, someone talked to me and they brought me today. That is critical to our growth and getting the message out about First Fridays and building our community up. So I really appreciate anybody that brought some folks. We're coming to the end of season 8 and we're gonna be going into season 9. So at the end of every one of our seasons, we have a lead well event. And coincidence enough is it's at the Do It Best Center. So that's over at General Electric. It's gonna be amazing. We did it last year and we had amazing speakers, and this year we have amazing speakers too. So you can look at our speaker lineup, and it's June 13th, put it on your calendar. Tickets are on sale, First Fridays Fort Wayne. We have room for about 150 people in that venue. So make sure you get signed up, get tickets, and also if you want to be a vendor and or a sponsor, talk to one of the board members or myself, and we can get you in there and get you taken care of. And then next, our last speaker is Amy Lerman on May 2nd. So put that on your schedule. That goes back to our First Fridays. So take advantage of that, put that in your calendar, and come join everybody here that wants to be the best leader of themselves. So I appreciate everybody coming, and have a blessed rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend, and hopefully the weather's nice.